So one more, oh, fancy. One more bacteria that I want to talk about is called Bacillus thuringiensis. You've probably heard of this as BT. Hopefully that sounds familiar to a lot of you. So this bacteria lives in the soil. It naturally produces a toxin with insecticidal properties. And this toxin is encoded by one of the genes in this Bacillus thuringiensis genome. So this is a bacteria that lives in soil. When insects eat it, they also eat this protein that is toxic to them, and they get sick. They cannot eat anymore. It's not a great way to live your life, or to stay alive, right, if you can't eat. So this actually is where the insecticide BT comes from, is from this bacteria. So BT is actually an organic pesticide. So what people do is they take either the spores of the bacteria themselves or some of that crystallized protein, and you can actually spray that onto your plants that are out in your field. And then if your crop is invaded by insects, your insects will then eat either the bacterial spores or that toxic protein that is now sitting on the surface of the leaves, and the pest will die. So that's BT. This is a approved organic pesticide, but you do have to spray this, yeah.
So how does a pesticide become approved organic?
It's organic, the bacteria made it. Okay. This is a naturally occurring toxin that is found in nature.
Okay.
Unless you know more about the regulations.
Yeah, so basically, I'll talk a little bit more about this later. But in terms of pesticide, the organic rules are that it has to be naturally occurring, not synthetic. So if it's made, in a chemistry lab in a factory, it can't be organic. But if it's something made in nature, regardless of how toxic it is, it can count as organic.
Okay.
So it's the source, not what it does.
Okay.
Yeah. So source is a bacteria that is naturally found in the soil. And then you take those bacteria or crystallized version of the protein, spray it on your plants. Insects eat your plants, also ingest this toxin, get sick, and die. You can also use BT as a genetically modified crop. So we've said that this toxin is encoded by one of the genes in the Bacillus thuringiensis genome. So you'd imagine if you go through, amplify that gene, use your restriction enzymes and cloning to get that CRY gene here. So your gene of interest in this case would be the gene that encodes that CRY toxin that make the insect sick. You of course have your marker gene also. So we're inserting our BT gene. Yeah.
I have a question that's kind of similar to his. Why does that bacteria make the insects sick but not the plant?
The bacteria, yeah, so that protein specifically is toxic to bacteria and not to plants. So you can think of some things that, like chocolate, you think is very tasty, it's toxic to your dog. So just some things are toxic to some organisms but aren't to others. BT happens to be, this CRY protein happens to be a protein that is toxic to insects but not to plants. So get your CRY gene into your TI plasmid, go through that transformation process, and get your gene now integrated into the plant genome. So now we have a transgenic corn plant because we've taken some DNA from another species and put it into our corn. Now when these worms come through and eat these corn plants that are transgenic, of course they get sick and die. So same outcome, same protein, two very different ways of getting this pesticide onto your plants. In the first case, people were spraying it on. In the second case here, the plant is making it for itself. And just to show you what this looks like, so this is a video. This plant over here on the left is a control plant, so it is not transgenic. And then this plant over here on the right is transgenic. It has this BT gene inserted into the genome. Yeah.
So are the effects of it then different if the plant produces it itself versus if it's sprayed on? I mean, I'd imagine if the plant produces it itself, it can potentially produce more of it and it possibly be more efficient as far as like farming and agriculture is concerned. Maybe, maybe not.
Depends on what frequency a farmer would spray their field.
Okay.
Also, right. It depends. Like you could go out and apply pesticides on your field every day. You could go out and apply it once every 6 months. You could go out and apply it once at the beginning of the season. So there's a lot of variability there. And of course, there's some variability in how well the plant's expressing that gene. So there's variability, I'll say, both ways.
Okay. So what if it was the same frequency as far as comparing the amount that is sprayed on it versus the amount that the plant produces?
These are good questions. I think Jeff is planning on talking about some of the pros and cons.
Okay.
So I don't want to jump ahead.
Okay.
So but that's a really great question, right? What's the difference between spraying this protein on the plants and having the plants produce it itself?
Yeah.
And that's sort of that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have a good answer for you. I don't have the answer for you.
Sure.
We have an answer, but it's our best guess too. You had a question also.
Oh no, it was actually just going to be a response, but you guys ended up going there. I was just going to say, to me, it would just seem like the frequency inside the plant, it will be forever present when it's a little baby plant or when it's older, and if it's not in it, then you have to spray it. But if there's some potentially negative side effects to the having it in the plant, I don't know that.
There's also ways to control expression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I can imagine like certification has certain things too.
okay, but I'm gonna get this playing. So remember, there's a worm on each of these plants. This one is not transgenic, and this one has that BT gene inserted into the genome. Granted, this is a time-lapse video, but it's pretty impressive how quickly that worm can take down that non-transgenic plant. It's one worm on each of these two
I'm
plants.
sure the other worm's dead
Yeah.
because it's not doing anything.
I don't know if they're gonna show you the worms at the end also.
Sure didn't hop onto the other plant. It's like, screw this.
So you can see how fat that worm got. It had a grand old time eating that entire non-transgenic plant. And then if you look at the damage on the transgenic plant, you can see that the worm did take some bites, very quickly got sick, and you can see that it is, I think they show you the worm somewhere. He did show you the worm, but he couldn't eat. He got sick. Couldn't eat. Took a couple bites, got sick. Sort of the end of story for that worm. The other one had a field day taking down that plant. So it is a very effective way to control pests. But you guys have brought up some great questions about which one's better and what's different. So I'm gonna let Jeff actually take over from here.